officers' country. It's where the officers slept. They shared rooms with their fellow officers. So here we have a 4-person suite. They have a common bathroom they shared. Officers, they used a normal toilet like you and I. The enlisted guys don't get a normal toilet. You'll see that later. Here we have 2 officers. But you can see it very much looks like it's lived in. All the uniforms, their books, their photographs are still there.
So we begin the war with a complement of 10 officers. The captain, the executive officer, who's the second in command, and 8 junior officers. Now, as the war progresses, they add 5 more officers to us. And that's because the war is getting increasingly technical. You need officers to run subsidiary parts of the ship. Their space, the junior officer's space, is all the way aft by the aft steering compartment. It's nasty. It's very much kind of a storage area where they just crammed 5 bunks in. So this is, you want to move up in rank and get one of these cabins. This is going to be much nicer. Now the men who are here, we have their names: Lieutenant Butler, Lieutenant Johnson, and Lieutenant J.G. junior grade Clooney in here. This is the XO. Now his cabin and the captain's cabin are deliberately separated in the ship because you don't want to take one hit and lose both your lead guys at the same time, so they don't sleep near each other. And typically the XO would be more the administrative leader and the captain would be more the tactical leader. But that's up to the captain. He can switch that around if he wants. You want everybody to be trained as much as possible, to be healthy, to be well fed, to be hopefully well rested against that moment when they're going to be in combat. The vast majority of your time in the Navy is not spent fighting. It's spent just living and maintaining the ship and doing what you're supposed to do. But when you go into combat, which is often with very little warning, you have to be functioning at 100%. You may have noticed also that the color scheme changes. Goes to green from cream, and that's because green is an additional reminder to enlisted men that you're not supposed to be in this area unless you have duties that permit you to be here. And you'll see this color again outside the radio room in the captain's cabin.
This is the officers' wardroom. It's where the officers eat their meals. They eat the same food as everybody else. It's prepared in the galley. They come through this hallway into an officer's pantry where it's plated on some nice china and then it's passed out to the officers. Apart from dining, they're going to use this room for recreation. They did have a record player on board Slater. We do have music playing. They could read books, write letters home, planning their trip. This is the largest table on the entire ship, so they could lay their charts and plan their entire voyage.
So these are called fiddle boards, and at sea, in a storm, I'm going to put these on top of the table in the wardroom. The holes cut in the fiddle board hold the plates and glasses still, so that they're not falling off the table and onto the deck. The other use for this table besides food, this is also the emergency surgery. And that's why the hospital lights are overhead. And here in this corner, you have an autoclave for sterilizing instruments.
So if you're in battle, someone is injured in this part of the ship, they're going to bring you here and patch you up. If they have to do surgery though, clear off the table, lay you down, get some morphine, open up the liquor cabinet, and open you up and do some work. So it could be someone doing surgery for the first time in their life, in the middle of combat, in the middle of a storm. And this thing is rocking and rolling. So I can't imagine the type of stress these guys had to go through. The photograph on our bulkhead, that is of our namesake. That is Frank Slater. He was a young man from Alabama. He grew up in Fife, Alabama. He enlisted in the Navy in February of 1942. Served aboard the USS San Francisco. He was a heavy cruiser. He was a 20mm gunner. On that date, the ships were anchored and they were alerted that a Japanese air raid was coming. They had about an hour until they arrived. So they sent the ships out to sea and got ready. According to eyewitnesses there with him, he most likely killed the pilots. He caused one of the engines to burst into flames. Unfortunately, his gun, the range is only about 1.5 miles, so the plane was extremely close. After it was damaged, it kept going and crashed right into a station before anyone could escape. Him and 10 others were killed. They all had a ship just like this named after them. When the Slater was launched in early 1944, his mom was the sponsor, so she and her family traveled to Tampa Bay, to the Tampa Bay Shipbuilding Company, and she christened it with the bottle of champagne, and she broke it across the hull, and Slater slid down the ways into the water.
This is the captain's cabin. It's both his bedroom and his office. And our first captain was Marcel Blanc. He's a merchant mariner from New And you may have noticed on the wardroom table, we have a bottle of Tabasco sauce there. That's in case Captain Blanc is still here. We want him to feel welcome on board the ship. This is his wife and daughter. Now, Captain Blanc is a merchant mariner before the war. He's also in the Naval Reserve. He's called up during the war. He commands a minesweeper for about 3 months, and then he's given command of the Slater before she's commissioned. He has a lot of sea experience, no question about that, but he's only 30, and this is only the second warship he's ever commanded in his life. So we've talked a little bit about the enlisted men and the officers and the level of responsibility they have to undertake with, very little training. The same is true of Captain Blanc. He knows how to run a ship. He hasn't taken ships into combat. And that's a whole different animal. But he turns out to be a good captain. We do not have a fatality on the ship in U.S. service. Now, captains do have some privileges, privacy to a certain extent. He also has his own bathroom that only he uses. But they also have all the responsibility, which is a lot to carry.
What was his reputation as a captain? What was he like?
People seem to think he was a fairly stern but fair captain. He's a good navigator. In a warship, you kind of want competency out of your captain first. You're willing to overlook a lot of personal issues if the captain knows what he's doing, because your survival depends upon the competency of the captain. So I might not like the captain personally, I might disagree with some of his decisions, but at the end of the day, if we're still afloat and I'm not hurt, that to me is a victory.